So I would like to officially welcome all of you to the Stockbridge Library's online poetry series entitled Medicine for the Soul. And this series has been bringing weekly virtual poetry readings to the world for well over a year. The program was started by the Stockbridge Library Association's president of the Board of Trustees, John Gillespie, who's with us today. And we have had many very talented poets join us over the last year, and today is no exception. Today we have with us Adam Grabowski. Adam, thank you for joining us. He is joining us from Holyoke, Massachusetts today. Adam's work has appeared in many journals, including but not limited to Off the Coast, Sixth Finch, Jubilat, DMQ Review, Hobart, Rust and Moth, Exit 7, Night Coffee, Drunk in a Midnight Choir, and Meet for Tea. His poems have been included in anthologies, What Saves Us, Poems of Empathy and Rage in the Age of Trump, which, Adam, I'm personally hoping you'll read some of your work from that anthology, and also in Alongside We Travel, Contemporary Poets on Autism. Adam is a two-time Pushcart nominee and the recipient of a 2020 Parent Writer Fellowship from the Martha's Vineyard Institute of Creative Writing. Adam holds an MFA in writing from the Vermont College of Fine Arts, and he may or may not explain his behavior in knife fights or pie fights. Adam, thank you for joining us. And I welcome you, and I turn the program over to you, John, and to you, Adam.
Yeah, Wendy, no, thank you a lot. So Adam, there have been so many themes in 2020 and 2021, the pandemic, racial injustice, income inequality, the whole political narrative, which never ends. Have some of those issues started to show up in your work? No, you're on mute, Adam. You're on mute.
You know what? I got out of the way for the other person, and now I'm muted. Thank you for the question. And again, I'm really happy to be here. And thank you to Stockbridge Library and John and everybody. It's odd because, from a political perspective, I've never written politically. I kind of tend towards the more personal, yet at the same time, these past 4 years, if not even longer, have been awash with lying, and lying has been such a key part of our national daily encounter that I come to believe that each poem is a political act, and I write honestly, and I think it's in a world of lies, an honest poem is kind of a counteraction to that. And I certainly say that the sadness and the claustrophobia at times factors into the writing, but it's almost more like it's the seams in the garment. Like, I don't know if the reader would see it, but I know if you pull it inside out, everything that we're talking about is very obvious.
Yep. No, great. So share with us, how does the creative process begin for you? When you're starting a poem.
I think my process, I want to say that it is a very long process for me. Poems often take years until I'm really comfortable with them. Sometimes I'll submit them for publication when I don't know if they're ready yet. I've not gotten success with that. I would necessarily advise that, but I think in the preparing it for publication, I think I often come up with solutions I don't think I would have found had I not been prepping them. Where they come from is a little more mysterious. It always starts with a bit of language, kind of a moment that I feel I'd like to capture somehow. What I do these days a lot is I record into my phone first. I think I started doing that a couple of years ago, where I was always in my car, either taking my kids somewhere, picking them up, or I was always on the way to do some sort of errand, and it's not like I could stop and write. So I just started. I had an app. I just started speaking into it, and it did change the way I wrote a lot. Things got more contemplative. They became a little less visceral, a little less immediate. But that said, they start from a bit of language. They start from kind of a hyper experienced moment, and I get everything I can down on there. And then it's a matter of, okay, I know my intention. I know what I'm trying to say. I know what I want to say. It's already on the page. How can I, in revision, meditate on that and make sure that if I'm putting it out into the world, it deserves a chance. It deserves its most honest rendering. And that's a long process. It's writing the poem all over again. Yeah.
How do you know when, a poem is ready for publication, or is the poem telling you, leave me alone and just put me in a book?
The poem is sometimes saying, you're making me nauseous, you have to stop. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's finished or ready yet. How would I put it? There's a click. It's a Tennessee Williams thing, I guess. You can just tell when it feels like there's nothing else you can do with it. Every problem's been addressed. It's very rare. I don't necessarily have that feeling in every one of the poems, and some poems have been published and I'm not quite done with them. But it's just a matter of like, have I taken this as far as I go? If there's flaws in it that I see, are they me being nuts, or are they deeply flawed? And so far, most of the stuff that got published has carried that click. I have yet to have something published, even when I think it's done, that I don't have a click to.
It sounds like you have a high batting average, which is always good. So please, please share some of your poems with us.
Be happy to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read some poems. Several of them are published. A few of them aren't in this first batch. And then I'm going to read from the chapbook, and that is, I'll talk more about that and where this came from and why it's a kind of a particular kind of writing for me. But I'll do a few poems, and then I'll do some hospital poems, and then I'll start with that, and then I'll close up with some new stuff too. Set my timer here. And this is a Western Massachusetts poem. I think I wrote it from a place of memory, and I think it's a towny poem in a sense. It's what happens when your past stays somewhere, but you still live in the area. You still have to keep driving near stuff, and things will hit you. And I call them mile markers. When I was 17, I was doing this, and now I'm 37, 38, and I have 2 children and a wife, and life is unbelievable. It's called Blonde September. We would park here after school, the Oldsmobile's air salted with our sweat, my forehead, your upper lip, our bodies' quiet search. Here, the tuft of hair just above my bicep. There, the beauty mark at the edge of your navel. This was our blonde September, Belle and Sebastian, and our hurried, ever-quickening breath. Our first everything, save that last exceptional gasp. Out here in this church bell of a town, roads wind their salt and concrete around farmlands turned properties. The forestry continues to get edged back, and the stone walls can only mutter to themselves. Still, this road, This path, crannied between berm and field fence, stays quiet as a farm, as distant as a house. Here, no one comes looking for us but us. September to May, and only a few cars ever passed by our fogged American windows, though we kept watch in shifts. Yes, a stray thought to glance up and around the bend while one's head swirled between the other's thighs. I tell you all of this softly. This time when love always meant discovery. This poem's too new to really be able to tell you what it's about. Maybe you can tell me, but it's got a cheeky title. It's called Autobiography, but the auto is crossed out. I don't think I've read this one out loud yet. There had to be more of the yelling and fighting than any one child could withstand for him to make a fantasy of the life he was going to live and then live it as if it were no fantasy at all, as if fantasy were for other people, or which he too had, though it lay farther afield for him. A father figure brings you home for Christmas, says, "Daughter, this is the one I've been telling you about." It's a life even he knows is closed off to him, though he tries and dreams and fights anyway on and on against a self not listening these days to any analyst. Instead, it's the poetry, wasn't it, always that moves him through his teens and into his 20s. And when fatherhood is brought back into his life, I'm pregnant. It's happening to two other people, and far enough away, he can almost see himself holding on. This is a poem that's after. This is I've always had a strong affection for the Pepto-Bismol colored Neruda's 100 love sonnets. And I always get flustered when I read it in front of people, so I think I just blew that title. But the first poem in that collection is to Matilda, his wife. So it starts with his wife's name, and then he kind of plays on it. So I wrote this for my wife. Rose, the name of a kiss with an edge, rose red like the cheeks of a boy soldier before battle and after it. I want to run through the marketplace of your name to gather you in all your colors until you resemble a wedding party or a collecting bruise. Unslip the green cording of your dress, let it fall in a wind down your thighs, you an unfolding curtain of a name. Kneeling at the dark of your hair, inside the rose of you, let me stay until you poison, until you cinnamon, let you poison me, rose, name of the water on my tongue, name of all things carved, show me what carves you, which water grows under you, then teach me to flower. I like to read that poem and this one together because it's kind of like a cause and effect. This is called Delivery. You were floodlit and naked from the waist down, neck soaking through the back of my hand, screaming you were going to die. You never looked so young. Our daughter first met the world as a pulse of wet, dark hair and left the room nameless in a havoc of voices, pulling the whole birthing room out with her like a shower curtain off its rod. The spent instruments, the concern, gone. I helped you out of bed. I walked you into the shower, and because we were still lovers back then, when they came to tell us that she was down the hall, healthy and held, it didn't feel miraculous. Not in the same way that, from behind the frosted glass, and I saw your full shape seem to melt away. miraculously. And I'll stop there for a minute or two, and I'll talk about the new book, which is Go On Bewilderment. You can find it at either attackbearpress.com or adamgrabowski.com. It's the easiest. It's one of the easiest ways to get it. This is a whole different animal for me. These poems are written on a typewriter. My friend Alex has a typewriter. She's a typewriter enthusiast. It comes from her grandfather, who was a typist in the Army in World War II. And she got a grant to just kind of put on these typewriter expositions, get kids looking at a typewriter, learning what a typewriter is. And either her or her partner, Jason, or both of them together concocted this. They wanted to run with the idea of poetry on demand, which I think originally started with poets at typewriters kind of typing poems on demand. Like you give them a prompt or some kind and they write a poem as fast as they can and you get back to it. So I think I talked about the way I write, the methodicalness of it. And they wanted me to do this. And it was so antithetical to the way I write. And I've never really written on a typewriter before that I saw a certain doom. And yet, first time I did it, which was in this like a sweltering June at an arts festival, I'm there with a borrowed typewriter and a little TV tray. I was shocked at how freeing it was. Absolutely shocked. I was in the middle of my MFA program, and so everything was so heady. And here I was, and I was able to write like I used to when I was a kid in my bedroom, when there's no aesthetics. I didn't owe anything to anybody. It was just writing. And I fell in love with that process. I did. To make it interesting, I gave myself like a 5-minute time limit. The poem was done after 5 minutes, no matter what. And to fulfill a lifelong fantasy, I got to borrow from one of my favorite movies, Before Sunrise, where the two characters, they encounter a poet, and the poet's, he's like, I don't want to beg for money, so if you give me a word, I'll put that word into a poem, and you pay me what you want to. And I always thought that was just the coolest way to make a living. So finally, I found a way to do that. So people would come up to me, a typewriter, and I would ask them to give me a single word. And I think we know where the story was going. Eventually, we ended up with this chapbook of typewriter poems. It's an accidental chapbook. I never expected it. Didn't plan on it. But I think we looked at what we had, and we felt it was good enough, and there was something to it that we wanted to put it all together. And I'm really proud of it. So I'm going to read about, they're all short. So I'm going to read about 6 or 7 of them. In some ways, they're all individuals. At the same time, they can all kind of be a suite. And if you can get this right, you'll see that certain single word is always highlighted, and that's basically the word I was given and what the word brought out of me.
So Adam, just before you start, how is that style? Is that style in conflict with your methodical style? I feel like you've now got two sides to the equation. Do you go, 5 minute, or do you go methodical?
I ended up buying a typewriter, and it's free jazz to classical, I guess. Not that that's necessarily the best analogy, but I have those poems, and I did it about 4 or 5 more times over the next 2 years. And so this book is kind of the 16, 17 of the best of, over 50.
Okay, great.
What I ended up doing, what it did bring to me is I revise on the typewriter now a lot. And some of the older poems that have bedeviled me for years, I just kind of go back to them and I type them out on a typewriter. And I think the physicality can be freeing.
Wow.
In a way.
Nice.
So this poem is called At Book Moon. Book Moon is the word. And that's, I wrote it when I was in Book Moon Books, which is in East Hampton, Massachusetts, the church bell of a town. It's a great bookstore, and I wrote this for them. I walk within a hidden place, nook of your neck, the bookstore corner just out of sightline. I have a radiator in my heart, hear it hiss, hear it turn off and turn on. When we leave here, heavy with books, lunch poems, like water for chocolate, where should we go? At what point will we know such a heat? Libraries ask us for quiet. It's the bookstores that get us talking. I forgot to mention that everything in here hasn't been touched. I didn't revise anything before publication. I felt, even when I wanted to, everything had to get played as it laid. It just felt like it would be disingenuous to do anything else. I remember like a 20-year-old kid coming up, and I remember being at that age, and the word she gave me was ramen, and it brought back, not that I don't still eat ramen, but it brought back the ramen years of my life. And so I went here with that. These are our ramen years, my love. They tell us to breathe in this time, take pictures, and ask for nothing less than everything. And they are right. I've never heard the air this clear, though the ghosts of the last tenant's cigarettes are everywhere. I sleep fine. I breathe easier. Another young couple, the word was kiss. You stopped listening first so we could kiss like we meant it. This is how we've learned each other's silences perfect. Wind hair, river teeth. You call me every name I've thought of. Don't ask me first whether I love you. This is when the kissing stops, when we name ourselves. This is my last best way to say, stay with me. Every poem in this book is based off one word. But once there's this older couple, well into their 60s. And I asked for a word, and they both gave me two different words at the same time. One said scrumptious, one said epiphany. So obviously scrumptious epiphany is what it had to be. And I felt bad because, I go, like, it's kind of a tacit agreement. I'm going to go with the poem where I want to go. And sometimes they go ribble to places. And I felt sheepish when I was done with it because I was, you'll understand when you read you hear the poem in a minute, but I was nervous to give it back to them. Luckily, they never came back. One of the few times nobody ever came back to get it, so I never had to worry about offending anyone. Such a scrumptious epiphany you are, a dove to my mouth. So you've arrived after being here for years. From above me, you come down and up and down. We get to make holy whatever we want. Call anything delicious. This isn't our last supper. For dessert, we come again. I haven't read that one yet out loud. I'm going to read two more of this, and then, it's getting harder to keep track of time. Do I have some time to read a few more after that, or what do you want, John?
127, Adam. So you got kind of 13 minutes.
Oh, cool. We'll make most of that.
Or more. You got.
Wonderful. This is again. So everything I told you is a lie. This is one poem that necessarily didn't come out of a word. It came out from It came out from my wife. I wrote it in between when there was a lull. I still kept to my rule, but there's a dedication that says for RG, which is my wife's name, Rose, my last name. So the RG on the page you can see is highlighted. I make myself a moon. I make myself, sorry about that. I make myself a moon. I make myself a feathery place for you, and the evening makes itself always. We live indoors despite such wildness. I make two moons of my eyes for you. For myself, I can't hide my wildness. I sleep next to you every evening. I lock myself indoors always. To hold you is to become the evening, skin lightly cool, skin feathery. What you won't say, I could hide behind a moon. Listen to me, listen to me. I'm banging just outdoors, wildly, always. And then I'll read the last poem from the book. And this was built on the idea of the word arrival. I wish I could remember who gave it to me or how, but whoever did it, they gave it to me on April 13th, 2019, because that's the date attached to this. And then nothing, and then more of that, and then sometimes, and then always. I want you to know me as I know the last of my eyelids flutter. That's E. Cummings. You continue in my endless days bewilderment. I can't ask you to know me this well, but you do. More of your endless ringing days and days of your arrival. The birds chirp ahead of you. Wake me. Just knowing the songs you sing as you step out of the shower will continue long after you've left. Keep me around. Let's go on bewilderment. It's $13, I believe. Grabowskipoetry.com. You can get it that way. I have a deal where for 13 it's the book, for 20 it's the book, and you can give me a word and I'll write your very own poem based on that, doing that. Again, I want to thank John. I want to thank Stockbridge. I'm going to finish up with several poems. And then I believe we have a Q&A if anyone's interested. I'm more than happy to take part in that. So these are weirder ones, but I'll start with a less weird one. These are two more hospital poems. Washing our hands, neonatal intensive care unit, Bay State Hospital, Springfield, Mass, October 2008. We stand here for the required 2 minutes, washing our hands, getting under the fingernails, around the cuticles, while a pile of still frame futures scatter and whiten in the bath. This is home now, this occupied country. There are signs insisting you not enter if you are coughing, feverish. There are signs instructing the nurses and the janitorial, custodial, social workers to wash and wash again every 20 minutes. What the signs don't say, but what we've come to understand, sitting each night in chairs, rocking with their brass plaques, naming the tiny dead, is that this nightly ritual of washing our hands has nothing to do with what we might bring in, and everything to do with what we might leave behind. And this poem is new. It's called Orpheus Waits in the ICU. How you've made me miraculous and mute. How all I do is dance inside this tongue. Sing of your mouth, the curve of your back. I remember everything. Engagement over ham and cheese. Cancer with a lemon twist. What I doubt, I've always doubted. Will my own throat hold out long enough to sing your name, your watery goodnight, and in the longing afterwards, my promise to never look back. First it was my lute, Then your phone charger. I keep needing things from the car, and I hate to leave you. It's a big hospital with a bigger parking lot. It takes a while. This poem is called Late Arrivals. This is new as well. I arrive with my molar on fire. Her office walls are pearl and diplomaed. They lay me down quickly, spread the tough paper across my wild, shaking breastbone. How I hate this part. Hustle of instruments, assistants, the coming and going, wind at my back, so much combustion in my chest, I could start a car. She reaches, places her hand on my shoulder, runs her thumb along my collarbone, softly eyes me through the shine of her face guard. Novocaine is its own metaphor. Then the gas, the high, thin air runs through me until my head boats up against the ceiling. I count the ripples. 1, 2. God, let me be an open mouth. Teeth are ancient. There goes my pain, grimly white and placed before me on a tray. The bread, the body, the decay. Into this bowl of water, I drift. I just got back from a virtual writers conference, and boy, are my headphones tired. But I took a few classes on the persona poem, and I ended up writing some stuff. And I wrote one poem from the perspective of Han Solo, and one poem, oddly enough, from the next door neighbor of Lorraine Baines. And if you don't know that name, that's if you remember from Back to the Future, that would be the mother that he encounters, his own mother he encounters as a teenager when he goes, Back to the Future. Back to the Future. I'll do the Han Solo one first. We're both short. Han Solo doesn't like Leia's new haircut. Not that we talk anymore. Not that there was much to talk about after Ben left. But these past few days, it feels like I've had the strangest feeling, like I've done this before. This kid, it's better looking than the last one, sure. Though damn if it's not the chase, the deal, the cause, the ragtag odds. Never tell me the odds. And me, at the ass end of good and evil, touching down last minute with a galaxy to save. It's not the best time to bring this up, but she's changed her hair, and I have a bad feeling about this. I have 3 more poems. A note of concern to Lorraine Baines for Mrs. Margaret Burns, who lives across the street. I have some concerns. Such a pretty blooming swan, and yet I see a fire in you, young lady. A heat that burns too hot for someone your age. You seem like you could be dangerous or in danger, or so in love with danger as to be dangerous to herself. I have some time this weekend. We could spend the day together in cold creams. You could teach me how to eat your dreams. How I wish I could have been a strapless evening gown of a woman and fall so gracefully wherever I've been thrown. A bedroom over your shoulder. Last night, I felt the fabric of you. I don't know what you smell like yet, your hair, the air around your collarbones, but I have some ideas. This is also from that conference. Adrian Matika, this wonderful inquiry into the love poem. It was a great workshop, and of the several prompts he had, they were all done. It was like several poems all building to somewhere, but the final part of it was describe love as love. I had 5 minutes to do it, so I did this. This poem is called Failed Prompt. Describe love as love. Aren't you cruel as a word to be so I'll start that over again. Get the marbles out of my mouth. Aren't you cruel as a word to be so unlike bird, which means bird, or door, which means open, or closed, or both, but rather exists somewhere on the tongue between definition and action. I can't tell you what I mean, but I can show you. And this is the last one. John, this is one of those years-long things. But again, I want to thank Wendy, John, and the library for all the support and help and platform. My mother meets the cast of Hair, Ludlow, Massachusetts, May 1970. And there's a little epigram here. It says, let the sun shine in. Oh, excuse me, Wendy, I don't have the poem you asked for. I texted my wife to see if she'd bring the book in, but she's, I think, in a meeting herself, so we'll have to wait. It's called The Plan, and you could read it at Bullets Over Bells online, which is like the online companion to the Bullets Over Bells anthology, which is just gorgeous. Frustrating and gorgeous. Okay, so My Mother Meets the Cast of Hair, Ludlow, Massachusetts, May 1970. Let the sunshine in. Smoking against the concrete facade of a moon-bleached gas station, she listens with a waitress's patience to the local boys' blue-eyed prattle. Her senior year of high school, and the air stinks of coveralls. Her hair is black and brushed out long flyaways, the occasional breeze, and his good blue eyes. A mile from here, the highway shakes. He talks, keeps talking, even after the bus pulls in and gasps to a stop. Its engine, a fan with too many cards stuck in the grate. Broken down or just in need of gas wouldn't matter to her as out spills the cast of Hair, road weary and unwashed, asking about a bathroom, snacks. Everywhere they go, shirts unbuttoned to the breastbone, cigarette butts falling from their sleeves, the laughter of the well-known and the well-liked. Before she can stub her cigarette's ember against her shoe, before the blue-eyed boy can chortle, they'd obviously slept in their costumes, the group having gaggled and gathered whatever was handy, state-line potato chips, bread, mustard, Schlitz, are looking to leave, which is when my mother, not the prom queen, but plenty reasonable, gets asked to come with. Come to Boston, they beseech. Come to Providence, or stay as long as you like. It doesn't matter, just come. Oh, it's a great idea. It's the best idea that I could come up with, where I was never born, where she steps onto a bus and never looks back. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Wow. All right, I'm not going to Ludlow this week, that's for sure. I don't know what could happen there, so.
I don't know what the cast would be now. It might be the cast of Hamilton. Maybe that would make my kids very happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Adam, for reading for us. It was truly fantastic, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Of course, we open to questions from anyone, but I think maybe I'd like to get us started, if you don't mind, if I ask a question.
Of course,
Yeah.
I'd love that.
Great. I recently occurred to me that in my experience of poetry, I treat it like nonfiction. I will hear a poem and think that it is based on the writer's actual experience. I just have been doing that all my life. And we recently had a poet who wrote a series of poems about a fictional experience. So I've become really curious now about, sort of, poetry is neither fiction nor nonfiction, obviously, but when you write your poems, are they always based on, except for the obvious? I mean, we know you're not Han Solo, although perhaps you have a costume or something, but are they always based on some kind of experience that you've had?
Well, I mean, I want to just say that your question reminds me of the famous story. I think it was James Dickey. I don't know if it was, I think it was him. He's a poet, and the story goes. I believe it was James Dickey. I don't know if it was him, but poet goes up and he reads this wonderful poem. It's about a brother, and one of the gentlemen in the audience is moved, tears, goes up to the poet and says, "You must really love your brother." And the poet looks at him, I believe this was Dickey, and says, "I don't have a brother." I mean, it's an ongoing thing, but I mean, the short answer is yes. Everything is true whenever it can be. And by that sounds slippery. What I mean to say is sometimes there's a larger truth. Sometimes there's aspects of something that work. Like it wasn't. It wasn't an engagement over ham and cheese. I think it was engagement over coffee for one. But that poem itself, I think that's a persona poem. That's not me. But stuff like that, I try to keep it in the realm as much as possible. But more than anything, Wendy, it's about honesty, and it's not about taking a voice that's not yours to play with. If you don't know where if you can't understand where that voice is coming from, if you can't understand what the experience is, then I think the poem will suffer. I won't get moralistic about it, but the poem has to stand for itself. One thing, I wrote a poem once about an encounter I had with someone in the audience, and he had said the poem I had read reminded him of his girlfriend, and she had died, and we talked about that a lot, and I ended up writing about that. I couldn't remember how she died when I went to write about it a few months later. And I didn't know him very well, so I was not about to go call him up and say, "Hey, we met once. Like, how did that loving girlfriend die?" So I had to ask myself, I want to finish this poem. I want this to be something. So how would someone that young die? And in the end, I settled on meningitis because it just seemed like enough. And so the poem ceased to be neither his nor mine. But the encounter, I hope, when someone would read it, they'd see something in themselves. Is that a good answer about that, Wendy? How does that?
That was a great answer. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was fantastic.
I'm glad we're recording this. I'll remember and I'll say it next time.
So Adam, could you restate that offer?
No.
If you go to poetry.com and buy the Bewilderment book for an extra amount of money, you'll write a poem based on one word?
I want to be very clear. Don't go to poetry.com. Adam Grabowski poetry.com.
Okay.
Which is the poet's website. There's a store there. You can buy the book, or for an additional amount of money, you can give me a word, like as if it's the process I've always done, and I will take 5 minutes and I will write you your very own poem, and I will put that in the book. And when it's sent off, either me directly or some other way, I'll get it to you.
Yeah. Great.
That's great. That's practically irresistible. I mean, how could someone not take you up?
You can't afford not to buy it.
Exactly.
Perry or Kathy, you have any questions or comments? I think there's something in the chat here. Oh, Wendy said brilliant. Okay.
Oh,
It was a
thank you, Wendy.
wonderful reading, Adam, a wonderful reading. Really enjoyed
Thank you,
it.
Perry. Thank you, Perry.
I'm
I
just
don't
thinking
know.
that would make a really great gift for somebody.
Yes, it would. It really would. You could buy one for yourself, one for someone else, and do that too.
You know, when you get to be my age, my 46th wedding anniversary was Monday. When you get to be our age, there's nothing that my husband and I need. In fact, don't want any more crap in our house. So
Yeah.
something like an individualized poem from a real poet would be quite wonderful, I would think.
You know, Kathy, is Kathy right? Am I reading that right, Kathy?
Yeah.
Kathy, you know, you mentioned that, and I remember my first time doing this, everything was always 5 minutes, but for this one time, this older gentleman came up to me and he wanted me to write a poem for his wife. And the poem had something to do, she was a dancer and she had been really upset and sad. And he wanted a poem that, like, it was like, I spent half an hour talking with him to get a sense of who he was. And so I could write a poem. I don't think there was any subterfuge from it. I don't think it was gonna say he wrote it, but at the same time, it was like, can you help me write this poem for my wife? This is what I wanted to say. This is what I feel it's about. That's what I have to say in me. And I took about 15 minutes with him after talking with him. It was the end of the day, so no one was waiting or anything. And I wrote it, and Lord knows whatever happened to it, but that was one of those things. So thank you for sharing what you shared. It just reminded me of that. I hadn't thought about that in a long time.
Yeah, and I think, Adam, you know, what I like about your reading is, you know, there's so many visuals that come up for me. You know, that's what I love about some of the words is, you know, that one with the, you know, the Ludlow one and the Schlitz and the, you know, the whole, yeah, no, they're just the imagery that is spawned, whatever you want to say, from the word groupings is really something I enjoy. You know, it just, it's evocative for me. It just starts, you know, things spinning around in my head in terms of like a little movie.
I got to thank Facebook for the Schlitz. I actually went on Facebook the other day. Says what were the 20-year-olds drinking in Ludlow in 1970? And
cold 45 malt liquor.
across the board, it was Schlitz, and I wanted it to be something because I never tasted Schlitz, but I've tasted beer, and I can taste the Schlitz now in some ways. I get closer to the poem because I've tasted a beer, and when I have a proper name to it, I don't know, I feel closer to it. That's what I love about specificity in poetry.
Yeah, that's great. No, very good, very good. Good. Any more
Thank you.
comments, questions?
I would just like to one more time thank you, Adam, very much for reading with us.
Yeah, thank you very
wonderful.
much.
Bravo.
I'm happy to, and we have a little campfire going here. Thank you for Kathy and for Perry and for everyone. I'm happy to do this. Let's not be strangers.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm gonna go look at that one word item. So,
Exactly.
all right.